Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. For this video, we're going to talk about Opentext Vim for SAP. Vim in this case stands for Vendor Invoice Management. This was actually a request that I saw in one of my videos, so one of you commented down below requesting for a basic process flow of Vim for SAP. Today we're going to discuss that basic process flow and the transaction codes that follow thereafter. We will talk about additional information such as the three-way match, some other tables and transaction codes for further analysis, as well as some customization checks. We'll be using my blog post as the main teaching aid for this tutorial, so I will leave the link down below. You can always refer to that for guidance. This is the blog post, and I did mention that Opentext Vim or Vendor Invoice Management is basically associated with the accounts payable process or the AP process. For now, we're going to focus on the main keywords, and that is vendor and invoice. So in case you need an overview of the accounts payable process, I suggest that you refer to my SAP cheat sheet on basic accounts payable or procure to pay process. At least you get an in-depth overview of the AP process before we go into the Opentext Vim. As an overview, just so we're organized in this tutorial, I will explain or go over the order of how we're going to discuss things. So we're going to discuss the definition of Opentext Vim for SAP. We're going to tackle the importance as to why invoice management is needed. And then we're going to go over the basic process. Towards the end, I will add some information which I discussed earlier. And of course, there's a summary that gives you an overview of what we discussed. So what is Opentext Vim for SAP? So this is the formal definition from their website. I did link it over here, so you can click on that. Opentext Vendor Invoice Management for SAP Solutions, or Vim, optimizes and simplifies the process of receiving, managing, routing, and monitoring invoices, as well as the related documentation. Stakeholders involved in any invoice problem can quickly and efficiently access invoice information such as the relevant purchase order number, the status of invoice payment, so on and so forth. You can definitely expect several vendor invoices in SAP that is managed through Vim for further processing. So all of those vendor invoices going into your SAP system, it's going to be processed through Opentext Vim. You can expect several features such as workflow approval functionalities, integration of some standard SAP functionalities like invoice verification, financial processing, etc. So basically, Opentext Vim for SAP is like an add-on, and it is a packaged solution. So you have SAP implemented, and you can implement Opentext Vim on top of that solution so that you get a more efficient process or customized process for your invoice management. This brings us to the next question, and that is, why is invoice management needed? When we talk about the capabilities and features of Opentext Vim, we consider the following. There are multiple people that are involved from different departments just to process one invoice. So you can expect a lot of people. Since a lot of those people are involved, you can also expect to distribute the said invoice or the document to each person. So if we're talking about 5 different groups of people and we're trying to approve or process one invoice, you need to sort of replicate and distribute the said invoice to each one concerned. This means that one invoice will most definitely be copied and stored several times in most organizations or a company. Without proper invoice management system, the overall cycle takes too long and it involves a large amount of manual activity. When I say manual activity, this means that it's not going to fully reduce or help in the prevention of certain problems such as duplicate payments, postings, and even lost invoices. So these are just some of the factors as to why invoice management is important. And overall, because of these considerations, we want to be able to establish more efficient, proper, and of course a simpler invoice management process to ensure that there is accuracy. We minimize manual errors through an automated or electronic system. We do, at the end of the day, want to prevent those duplicate payments, postings, lost invoices. Now we're gonna move on to the basic process, which was what was requested. And we're going to cover two kinds of end-to-end flows and their corresponding transaction codes. So when you say Opentext Vim or vendor invoice management, we're talking about two basic end-to-end flows. One is the automated paper-to-post invoice management process, enclosed here is the with OCR, and the second one is E-Invoicing process. In this tutorial or video, we will cover ICC or Invoice Capture Center, which serves as the OCR, the one indicated here. It stands for Optical Character Recognition. And basically, the ICC serves as the OCR component for Opentext Vim. Okay, so you guys know the acronym, what OCR stands for, but what exactly is it and what is its use? Just to give you a high-level description or explanation, it is through OCR or Optical Character Recognition that basically facilitates the scanning of documents, and it interprets the generated images and of course converts them to system text. So you can expect, for example, a paper invoice or a printed document. You can use OCR to scan this document and it will convert it to system text. These text or these system text can be populated in SAP. So at the end of the day, you can think less typing, more scanning, if that makes any sense. Next, we're gonna focus on the first process, which is automated paper-to-post invoice management with OCR. So again, this process involves the optical character recognition component of Opentext Vim, and you will notice that in the process diagram below. Let me zoom you in. So these invoices basically need to be prepared first and then scanned. You'll notice that there are dotted lines, so we're going to focus on the orange portion first. And that basically says that this process or these steps happens in ICC or the Invoice Capture Center. So you can think of this as a separate server or environment where the scanning of invoices take place. The images are stored here and they are also linked to SAP. For the green dotted lines, you'll notice that these are all residing in SAP in terms of the process steps. We have step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Let's start with step 1. And that is prepare. This basically means you need to prepare the documents. May it be for scanning, may it be through paper inbox, an actual document needs to be scanned, incoming mail, so on and so forth. So just prepare the documents. And step 2 would be your OCR portion, meaning we're going to interpret those scanned documents and transform or convert them to system text. So this is where the invoice interpretation happens. Moving on, so we're done with the ICC portion. We're now going to SAP. The vendor invoice that is incoming or goes inbound to SAP needs to be verified first. So there are business rules that apply, so on and so forth, and it needs to be checked to ensure that there are no duplicate invoices. So you'll notice certain statuses or notices that say, okay, we fully scanned and interpreted the details from the vendor invoice and we have an exact same invoice existing in SAP with the same details. So there's some sort of warning or heads up that, okay, this is duplicate, please double check and let us know, or let the system know if this is a valid document. So once we're done with the verification and completion, we're going to the exception handling portion, meaning the workflow is being triggered. So again, we talked about different kinds of people from different organizations or departments that need to take a look at the vendor invoice and approve, double check, and maybe even send each other some comments based on the findings that they see on the invoice. Once the workflow trigger is done and the invoice is fully approved by all of those people that are required to do the approval, this is the time that the document is posted. After the document is posted, we go to our last step, which is the actual payment proper, because again, this process talks about paying the vendors. For the process, I did include a table below with the transaction codes. So for example, for step 1, invoices are prepared as a prerequisite for scanning. This is non-SAP and this happens in ICC, so there's no transaction code for that. Over here, I have an italicized indicator here saying that data is being brought to SAP. So you can expect this to be a batch job that is being set up in SAP just to facilitate the integration to SAP. You'll find that there is a job set up in SM37. At the same time, when we say ICC, you can also expect a job there that is run just to ensure that the integration is happening from ICC to SAP, and of course, both systems need to be able to communicate with one another. For the workflow proper, I did include the note that you need to consider the COA setup or the chart of authority. So this means that you need to be part of the chart of authority. Your name has to be there, or your SAP user ID, so that you will be able to approve the invoices accordingly. And of course, if your colleague is out of office, on vacation, for example, or you can be maintained as a substitute in the substitution maintenance Tcode. Then we have our Vim workplace. So think of this as your inbox for all the invoices that are pending approval, so you can do the approvals there. On the last step, for example, I did mention payment proper will be triggered using the posted SAP document once everything is fully approved, or once the invoice is fully approved. So we're simply using the standard F110 to do our payment proper. Moving on to our second basic process, and that is the E-Invoicing process. You'll notice that in the diagram below, it's more or less focused with the green dotted lines. And this covers the whole E-Invoicing process, so everything is in SAP. Instead of dealing with the scanning proper and OCR, invoices are being sent electronically to SAP through the concept of E-Invoicing. So if you're familiar with EDI or electronic data interchange, one good example is that the data will be sent through IDocs or intermediate documents. Overall, invoice details, you don't need to scan, use ICC, so on and so forth. It's being sent to SAP through EDI by form of IDocs. And once the IDocs are in SAP, the same process applies, so there is a duplicate check. We have the workflow triggers, the posting of invoices once fully approved, and of course, the payment. The same process applies, except for step 1 and 2. So you'll notice that 1 and 2 has been merged, and we call it as e-invoice reception, and we're using EDI for this method. And for the transaction codes, again, for this process, since we're dealing with IDocs, I did include transaction code WE10. So you need to be able to know the certain settings or the certain details that make up the IDoc for Vim. We have the same overview for workflow proper, meaning chart of authority setup, substitution, even the payment proper is utilizing the same transaction code. So this is it for our basic overview on e-invoicing. It's quite straightforward. The only difference again is that we're using EDI and IDocs to bring the invoices inbound to SAP. Moving on to additional information, so we have a concept called three-way matching principle, and you might be wondering, okay, what is the three-way match? Or for those of you who are familiar with the accounts payable process, you might know what this is. This is basically a process that is used in accounts payable, specifically when we're dealing with vendor invoices. So in SAP, you can think of it as a way to control, check, and verify that the purchase order, goods receipt, and invoice all match in terms of price, item, and quantity. So I have here a simple diagram to help you guys visualize. Again, the GR, PO, and invoice need to match in terms of unit price, item, and quantity. This basically makes up the three-way match, right? And this is covered in vendor invoice management. So if you were to do this manually, it would be quite tedious and you may be prone to errors. Okay, so we know what the three-way match is, but why do we have to use it, or what is its purpose? When we talk about the AP process, remember that this process involves payment. And at the end of the day, we need to be able to pay the vendor accurately. We also want to ensure, as mentioned earlier, that we do not do any double payments, we do not have any duplicate payments, and in concept, the three-way match prevents us from incorrect payments, and also in a way, it prevents transaction with fraudulent invoices. So if you're interested to know more about this, I did link a useful article. You can click on that for reference. Next up, we have the status check in the Vim admin tool for monitoring. This is in the transaction code highlighted. And this is especially useful or helpful for those of you who need to monitor the status of the invoices. So for example, if you're expecting a certain invoice in SAP, you can double check the status. So for example, we have one for scanned, meaning, okay, this invoice was already scanned in ICC. 72, meaning we're done with the scanning, we're trying to interpret it and translate it to system text, which is sent to OCR. The next few statuses are in terms of the validation rules. So for example, it's trying to interpret if, let's say, the specific invoice is duplicate or it's the exact same copy as another invoice, and you need to be able to verify that before we move on with the process, because again, we want to prevent double payment or double invoices, so on and so forth. 76 here talks about the validation being complete, and lastly we have 77 as the sent to workflow, meaning the workflow was triggered. There are more statuses involved or that can be seen in the admin tool, so you can always refer to this transaction code and browse through the statuses. For more transaction codes and tables for troubleshooting and analysis, you can refer to standard Vim tables. So if you're dealing with invoices and you want to know the header details of the document, you can refer to this table. If you want to know the item details, you can refer to this table. And of course, you can always refer to my post on the Opentext Vim for SAP solutions, Tcodes, and tables for troubleshooting. Next up, if you're trying to maybe do some testing or if you want to replicate a certain invoice, you don't necessarily have to do the actual scanning of the document and triggering the OCR and then sending to SAP. You can always make use of these transaction codes. So we have one for the OCR scenario and a non-OCR scenario. For example, you can always copy an existing invoice through these transaction codes, maybe do a little change of data if you're trying to experiment. Now, if you're doing or if you're focusing on e-invoicing, you can of course use WE19 to replicate your scenario or simulate an inbound IDoc to SAP. This means that when you use this transaction code, you need to be able to know the inbound function module that is used specifically to process the Vim related IDoc data. If you don't know the function module for this in terms of processing Vim IDocs, you can refer to this Troubleshooting IDocs post that I did, and there's a portion there that talks about finding the function module for a specific IDoc. And lastly, we have the Opentext customization. So it's nice to be able to check this transaction code. It's the S-Pro of Opentext, similar to our S-Pro in SAP, only it has an indicator for Opentext, which is OPT. And one of the major configurations that you can check would be the incoming document processing portion, and this focuses on the channels that you can maintain for incoming documents. So for example, if you're expecting Vim documents from EDI, you need to maintain that channel. If you're expecting documents from email, then you need to maintain it here. And if you're expecting documents from ICC, meaning it is coming from the ICC server after scanning, then you also need to maintain it here as a channel, if that makes any sense. And the second one is the document type configuration, and this focuses on the configurations and settings involved in a document type. This is the highlighted row, and if you click on that, you'll notice that there are certain settings over here, meaning to say that you can set up the processing sequence by indicating the step ID, process type, process description, as well as the additional checkboxes to help with your additional settings. For example, if I select this DP document type, it is masked in blue, I can say that, okay, this is how you should process this document. First step, please apply the business rules. Second step, please apply the additional business rules. I wanted to separate it, for example. Next up, we have some custom rules that you want to apply. It really depends on the customization or the functionalities that your client wants. So we're done with everything, and now we're moving on to the summary. So what is Opentext Vim for SAP? This is a packaged business solution for vendor invoice management, and it is provided by Opentext. This is like an SAP add-on. So you have an existing SAP system and you want to add Opentext Vim on top of that. Why is invoice management important, or why is it needed? Again, we want to be able to establish more efficient, proper, and simple invoice management processes to ensure accuracy and, of course, minimize those manual errors. For the basic process, we discussed two: automated paper-to-post invoice management with OCR, and the e-invoicing process, which involves IDocs. For additional information, we have the three-way matching principle. So again, the PO, GR, and invoice need to all match in terms of price, item, and quantity. Why do we do this? We want to prevent incorrect payments and transactions with fraudulent invoices. For the status check, there is an existing admin tool for monitoring, and this is the Tcode. Other transaction codes or tables are provided over here, and I did link a separate post. Next up, we have the Opentext customization. So again, two major configurations that you can check on for further analysis or to analyze the data flow would be the incoming document processing and the document type configuration, which is found in the Opentext S-Pro. That's basically it for this video. I really hope that you guys were able to learn something from this. And if you have some questions, feel free to comment down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.